when you survive something like cancer, like from day one of getting that diagnosis, that's shit's going to be with you for the rest of your life.
Hi, and welcome to the Healthy Adult Podcast. I'm Lori Jean Glass, the CEO and founder of Pivot. And today I am so excited to have with me a colleague, Kayla, who is here to talk to us today about different ways to do hard things. And before we get going in our conversation, there's a couple of things that I want y'all to know about Kayla. I told myself I wasn't going to get emotional, and I probably am. First of all, she's an incredible young woman. I have learned so much from her, and I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to work with her. Kayla has been through many challenges in her young life, and the one that we'll be talking about today is one that happened at a very young age. Kayla had cancer, breast cancer, and she has a documentary film on Amazon called Vincible, and it's about her journey. And Kayla is going to be going in for a surgery next week and has been preparing for it. And in talking with her, I realized that what this young woman was doing in regards to preparing herself was so remarkable and so different and really worth hearing and listening to her incredible story. So um, I'm here today really to listen more to and just celebrate this beautiful young life that is uh, filled with courage and resilience. And I can't say enough, Kayla. I'm so happy to have you on today, really, truly, and welcome.
Thank you. Super excited to be here and to share more. And thank you for that kind intro too.
Yeah, yeah. So where should we start?
Yeah, well, as you kind of mentioned, I do have this surgery coming up, and it was one that happened pretty sudden, the decision behind it. But kind of just to take like a step back, even to set the stage of how we got to this point, going back 10 years now is when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was diagnosed with a type of cancer too that women typically get like in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And so it was a really strange time to deal with what I was dealing with at 24 and 25. And that was a brutal experience that I went through.
Mhm.
And from the beginning, it was like a switch inside me flipped that showed, hey, the way that the people next to me going through this are doing it doesn't work for me. I tried it everyone else's way, a pattern that I had been doing in my entire life in all areas up until that point. And this was kind of the first time I really gave myself permission to do things a little bit differently. And so some of the things that looked like were instead of just having chemo treatments, we did chemo. Basically, I had a group of friends come every time, and I had all the factors there for a fun party, but it was still a really depressing scenario because they saw this girl, strapped up to all these machines. And so they became themed treatments. And I always say I'm probably the first cancer patient in history that was ever like, I can't wait for chemo next week. And there's a lot of pictures
What
of me.
kinds of themes?
Yeah. So we did prom night. My sweet father, who was there for every appointment along the way, he had a limo pick my friends and I up, and I borrowed a dress from a quinceanera shop that one of my friends ended up buying for me, like this huge pink dress. And a limo took me 3 blocks to my appointment that day. We did superheroes. I wore a spider suit and I had those silly string web blasters I was shooting around the halls. And
Oh my
my
God.
dad totally only picked that theme because he saw a Superman costume that had like an 8-pack abs built into it, and he wanted to wear that. We did a mustache bash, so there's definitely pictures of me passed out in the hospital with a mustache on. We did an 80s night. We just had a lot of fun with it, and it really shifted the experience because before chemo, I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do treatment anymore. I don't care what that means for my outcome. I was so in the hole, and chemo doing something a little different shifted the experience for me.
Did
And
you named it Themo?
chemo, yep.
I love that. And what a great way to like go in with a more positive outlook and attitude, which probably is really helpful.
Definitely. Yeah. It served me really well. And throughout radiation, that's every day in the hospital for 7 weeks straight. And so every Friday when I got to check off another week there, I brought celebratory things for the other patients or for my nurses and different teams there, and just kind of a way to give back to the place that was suddenly my home. And I did another surgery. I had a surgery on my ovaries back in 2015, and I was wigging out about it. So my friends and I all showed up at 5 a.m. with wigs on, and thankfully I had some cool doctors that time. So my anesthesiologist and surgeon both wore wigs underneath their hairnets, and I fell
Oh,
asleep with them on. I woke up with them just like that. So my interpretation is that they did the whole thing like that. If that's true or not, we'll never know. Um, but yeah, so that really kind of showed me that I could take something really terrible, the worst thing I had experienced, and not to mention just me, but those around me. My friends and I had to interact with death and dying in our 20s, and to add a little lightness and fun to the experience. And it helped, I think, it make it be a little bit safer for me to live through and others to show up for.
oh, wow. I love that. Talk about a different way to do hard thing.
Exactly,
That is
exactly.
so, so cool. Yeah. So tell us about, do you have a theme for the next week?
I do. So, um, the surgery that I'm having next week is again, it's related to my ovaries, and there's also like a lot of grief because it's going to impact my fertility. It's going to impact me hormonally, and I've had my hormones screwed with before, and I know that that can really change who you are as a person. But since it's related to the ovaries and those are holding my eggs, what's left of them, we're doing egg theme this time. So
Oh,
2 days before, gonna have a little gathering for an egg bash. We called it Hasta los Huevos, and we're going to have people come over. You got to be dressed up as your favorite egg-laying creature. If you don't come in costume, I get to throw eggs at you, and we're gonna have quail egg quiches. We're going to have deviled eggs. We're going to have eggnog milkshakes and a bunch of little other egg themed dishes, as well as egg crafts and egg games, too.
oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Well, is it okay if I ask you like some hard questions?
absolutely.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing all of this and having the courage to do so. And that's hard
Hmm.
at your age
Yeah,
to give that up, like, and you've already done difficult things. I mean, just going through the breast cancer, and having to go through all those surgeries. Maybe walk us through what has changed in your body and why this one is a big one.
yeah.
What would you say to anybody going through something similar?
Sure. Yeah, so the first go at all of this when I was in active treatment, I really treated it kind of like my old athletic days where it was put your head down, um, you know, grunt through it and figure it out after the fact.
Mhm.
And
How
while
old were
that
you?
24,
Okay.
24 and 25, and while that kept me safe and able to show up and even create something as silly and fun as Themo, man, there was ruins waiting for me to look at after the fact. And something people don't always recognize about being a cancer survivor is it's very different than breaking your arm, and not just in the obvious ways, but in the way like when you break a bone, you get a cast. The bone heals. Hopefully, maybe you have to have surgery, you put things back in place, but then you get to go about your life with your arm fixed. When
Mhm.
you survive something like cancer, like from day one of getting that diagnosis, that shit's going to be with you for the rest of your life. And while
The possibility of its return,
the
right?
possibility of its return, and just it's like a mark that you get when you're diagnosed with cancer. And so um, I'm 10 years removed now from my diagnosis. I'm 10 years cancer free, and
Mhm.
I still have to see an oncologist twice a year every year. I still
Mhm.
have to see multiple actually different oncologists because I had a hereditary link to the cancer that I had. And so I still go to cancer related appointments, many of the months out of the year.
Mhm.
And so it's like this world that I'm constantly stepping in and out of, stepping in and out of. And then your body, talk about your body keeping the score, like, man, when May rolls around, that's something inside my body just goes off and it's like, oh yeah, that's when I was diagnosed. Or like October goes around, that's when I had this surgery. And so there are all these like little weird markers that will most likely be with me my whole life. And um, I learned from a friend to kind of equate it to being thinking about a car. For a long time, cancer was in the driver's seat. Eventually, the passenger got in the back seat. I try and keep it in the trunk as much as possible. Some days it creeps back up. It's about to definitely be sitting shotgun with me, if not being in the driver's seat next week as I go through this surgery again. And so it's definitely challenging, and it's interesting of the different times and ways that it can really creep back on you like it's happening all over again.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It reminds me a little bit, we get a lot of clients that have attachment disorder. I mean, I have attachment disorder. It's in my book, and it's with you forever.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
know, although it's different.
Right. Right.
It's
It,
interesting. It's also different, right? It's all so different. And I've never had cancer, so I can't identify on that level. I've had many friends and family members who have, and lost some to it. And it's so complicated because there's so many different types and so many different types of treatment,
mm-hmm.
and there's so much money going into research and development and all of that, and trying to get ahead of this thing that has just taken so many people, the
Yeah,
lives of so many people, and not just the lives, but a part of the life, which is what you're explaining so beautifully.
absolutely. And honestly, that was the biggest gift. So prior to working for Pivot, I was a client of Pivot's and got to go through coaching as well as the Glass House Intensive too. And up into that, I had done 8.5 years of traditional talk therapy or really targeted trauma work to work through this experience. And if I'm being honest, the goal of all of that for me was, how do I make it so that this never happened? How do I make it so that I don't have to experience what I lived through? And Pivot was the first place that offered me the reality that, one, girl, this is something that happened to you and nothing can change that. Nothing, there's no little magic eraser to make this go away. And so it's going to be with you, just like you were talking about with attachment disorder. The second piece, too, though, was if you're looking for a different way to relate to what you went through, a different way to have a relationship with the trauma that you've experienced from this, we can offer that to you. And that was so freeing to me because I could stop putting energy into making it disappear and start putting energy into healing my relationship with what I've gone through in my life.
Oh, wow. 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 That's so beautifully put.
Mm-hmm.
It is so beautifully put.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a completely different approach, and what I loved about the way Pivot way of doing it was that it was rooted in reality. My
Hmm.
dream of it disappearing was a total fantasy. And rooted in reality, while it's uncomfortable, fantasy is so fun to live in. But man, that'll come bite you
Like
in the
my
butt.
prince, my shining prince is coming in.
Exactly, exactly. Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. And you have a daughter and a
Hmm.
husband
I do.
now.
Yes.
Yeah. And tell the story about, if you don't mind, I love the
Mhm.
story about how your husband found you and thought how badass you were,
Yes.
sporting your bald head and
Yes, yeah. So my husband and I, we had a bunch of mutual friends. We were both living in Southern California. And I was like, when I was sick, I was like that kid on a milk carton. Man, everyone had my face as their profile picture on Facebook, or they were just posting tributes to me 24/7, which is lovely and also so bizarre to see yourself portrayed like that. And sure enough, though, my husband saw my face all over and I was bald. And he was just like, damn, who is this badass? She shaved her head. This chick is so cool. I got to reconnect with her, connect with her, and, really try and get it to be a part of her life. And so he slid into my DMs, as they say, and was just, made some comment about my smile and that I was really cool and wanted to connect further. And I had to be like, oh, I'm not actually that cool. I have cancer. I didn't shave my head because I'm a badass. And
You are a badass. And you had been through a lot. I'm sure he looked at it
sure.
that way, right?
Sure. But, it was kind of a conversation starter and really allowed us to connect in a different way than, we probably would have otherwise. And I was going through active treatment at the time. And so I didn't really have time for, kind of some of that normal stuff. So, in some ways, our relationship from there really accelerated pretty quickly. And then, there was a point too where he was living abroad playing volleyball, and that can be an isolating experience in a foreign country where you don't speak the language. And he was dealing with a Finnish winter while I was in a hospital bed. And so we both had a lot of time to get to know each other and keep in touch. And we formed, just a really deep friendship. And then when he was back stateside, spending time together in person and just, we had a great friendship bond. And I was definitely in a place too where I had gotten, burned in a couple relationships while going through active treatment. Kind of, to be fair to those individuals, this was not really an age appropriate experience to go through. And so I understand that, hey, maybe if I had been on the other side as a 20, whatever year old, I would have had challenges to watch someone that I cared about, looking death straight in the eye.
Yeah.
But my
And having
husband.
so many changes with your body.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I used to walk into the room and it'd be like, the girl with a pretty smile, and suddenly I was the girl with the bald head, and like, what's wrong with her? Or, little kids would point and ask, like, "Mommy, is that a boy or a girl?" And man, like my friends were navigating dating, and I was like, I don't, I had a double mastectomy, which is a breast amputation. And like, how do I figure out dating? I would jokingly be like, oh, it's just like Barbie, like that's what I'm like. But the reality of it is, um, I couldn't even think about doing those things, much less navigate how to do it.
Yeah.
And so, thankfully, my husband and I formed a great relationship, and I had been in a point where I was like, I'm just going to focus on me. And man, there's something about when you put out that energy that you're just going to focus on your relationship with yourself, that seems like it can really open up the door for, Mr. Right or Mrs. Right to walk through the door then. And
Why
we
do you suppose that is?
yeah, I think I was probably finally in like a really healthy place and had in alignment with myself and had my priorities much more squared away in healthy ways. And so, yeah, we were on a road trip across country. And I remember day one, I said, like, oh, by the way, like, you're probably going to fall in love with me by the time we get to our destination. Everyone does, like, just so you're prepared. And, it was like 24 hours into the drive. I was like, oh shit, like, I think I'm in love with him. And, the rest was kind of history from there. And then, it was a year to the day. So I was told after my first ovary surgery that I was infertile. I was in complete ovarian failure from the chemotherapy treatments that I had gone to. And I hadn't been allowed to do any fertility treatments prior to starting chemo because I was on a quick timeline. The cancer I had was really aggressive, and it was, I had to make a decision at 24. Do I want to plan for this family that I don't even have when I don't even have a partner? Or do I want to save my own life and figure out the rest later? And so that was the decision I made. But
Mm-hmm.
when I found out that I was infertile from the treatments, that was easily like the most devastating hole. Like, couldn't eat, couldn't drink. It was horrible. But sure enough, a year to the day when I found out I was infertile, I found out I was pregnant. And so that, like, one follicle I had released that one egg, which made this one baby, our beautiful daughter. And we've had a really
Charlie.
yep, and we've had a wonderful almost 7 years with her.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a miracle.
She is. Yeah, she knows it too. She probably told her kindergarten class about her being a miracle last year. But yeah, it's really special. And I think, another thing I learned from Pivot is what it means to savor. And we do a lot of savoring as a family of these special moments, not just like the big obvious ones, but also the little ones too, of just, we were out in the lake this morning, and just kind of taking in the beauty around us and feeling the water and savoring this moment of kind of just floating along together. And I'm not sure that I really would have been able to access some of those experiences had I not been through what I have been through.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What a beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. What else do you think would be valuable as it relates to the different ways to do hard things? I want to just say one thing about what you just shared, having that whole year of feeling like you're not going to be able to be a mother
Mm-hmm.
and have a child, and then having getting pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's how do I say this? I don't want to like upset anyone or make it sound, too too different. Well, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to be Lori Jean here. I'm
Yeah.
just going to say it. It's like you can't always believe what you're told when it comes to medical stuff.
Right. Right.
And there's a lot of great, just like there's a lot of great therapists out there. There's a lot of great coaches out there. We don't have all the answers, and sometimes the answers are just in the universe waiting to come to us. So I love that, for whatever reason, that hope that still was in you to be able to be a mom. I think that desire just it answered you.
Absolutely. And, one thing my husband to this day even reminds me of when I struggle with some of this medical stuff is that it's called medical practice. It's not called medical, we've got all the answers and we know everything exactly to a T. It's a
I love that.
practice.
I
And
love
so, yeah, they're not always right about things, and sometimes you do have to default to that voice inside that tells you, I don't know, or maybe something could be different, or what if, just that what
Mhm.
if voice. And so, yeah, really thankful that we were able to lean into that. And the experience that I had, I think, is definitely helpful to what I'm about to, what I'm preparing to do, knowing that
Mhm.
I do have a beautiful daughter. And our family does feel pretty full. I also know that I never planned on only having one kid. I was always very vocal, like, I'm not going to have an only child. Only children are weird. And, whatever that is. And, and kind of finding ways to make peace with it and learn acceptance is something, yeah, definitely working on, but also too, like, permission to grieve that. And again, like, one of the things that I've learned through my pivot work, the retreat and my coaching, is the
Mhm.
ability to manage and tolerate my feelings in a way that, like, it hurts and it's painful, but I can sit in the gutter with it, and I don't have to push myself out of it. I don't have to try and numb with some substance. I can lean into the love and support that I have, and I can lean within the safety of myself that, like, hey, this feels horrible and gut wrenching and terrible right now. And, an hour from now, it might feel completely different. And
Mhm.
so, leaning into some of those repairs and empowerments,
Mhm.
you're taught as a client, and ways to kind of shift, and not just like rush through it and push myself through it. And I will say that, like I said, my first go around at all of this, it was all just like head down, get through it and deal with it later. And now I have the ability and the agency to be able to sit in reality and the shit of reality while I'm going through it, instead of like, oh, I'm just going to deal with this later on. Now I
Mhm.
can experience it in the moment and be okay doing that.
Mhm. Yeah. And the beautiful gift that you now know that only children are not weird.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Or I don't think she's weird anyways. I like her a lot.
You're not weird.
Yeah.
Spirited? Yes.
Yes, very, very, very. Yes. Yeah.
Adorable.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's been cool. So, in preparation for the surgery, I've done a lot of work, as I've talked on already, to kind of get myself into this healthy, pretty stable, pretty constant space that I like to live in now. And I really want to stay in that space. Like that is my goal. Like I love neutrality, not in the way that I'm bored or not engaged, but like true, neutrality and being able to ride the wave when I'm outside of that space. And so the first thing that I did, I went in, hopefully this isn't TMI, but I went in to get an IUD removed and I left with a surgical plan. So, like I said, very sudden and unexpected. And I've had a month now to prepare for it. Again, not really that much time. And so, one of the
And
first things
that's not TMI, but can you give the listeners, if you're comfortable, a little more
sure.
context? Like you
Yeah.
go in to get that removed and you were told what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, so every 6 months I have to have my ovaries scanned. I have the BRCA2 mutation, which puts me at a predisposition for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, melanoma, ocular cancer, and a couple more, I'm sure, pancreatic, I think, especially these hormone-based ones. And even though that some of these benchmarkers are for these cancers are a little bit older than I am now, something that we've learned is that if I'm going to get something, I clearly get it very young. Even though
Oh,
I was, more likely to get breast cancer, I should have still gotten it maybe like 40, 50, not 24. And so, we got to be on alert for those things. So I do surveillance and I also have some blood work done every 6 months for my ovaries. And um, basically my IUD wasn't in place. So I had to have a follow-up appointment with my gynecological oncologist. And I had also just received, so in my imaging, they had shown that I had a complex cyst in my right ovary, the one that I'm getting removed. And they also, I had just found out too that my aunt, who literally just finished breast cancer treatment, maybe like 4 months ago, has a secondary breast cancer, not even a recurrence, but a secondary breast cancer came, and it's stage 4. They're giving like a very short lifespan, and this is after she had already had colon cancer too. And so this is her third cancer, and so it runs strong in my family. I have an uncle who just finished prostate cancer treatments, and then I have both my maternal grandparents died of cancers that were hormone based, prostate and also breast cancer. And my grandmother died really young from it. My grandpa died relatively
that
young from it.
genetic disposition is like that thread
Exactly.
is strong.
Exactly. And, I'm a firm believer in, there's an expression that says genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And so I try to be really
Wait,
mindful.
say that again.
Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Oh,
And so, just because you
I've
have
never heard that.
Yeah, just because you have these mutations, like it doesn't guarantee you're going to have it. But are there certain things that we have that are in under our influence in life that could, lean this to being more likely to happen? That's what I believe. And so, since surviving breast cancer, I've made some real radical changes in my life. A lot that my family and friends are like, they think I'm the weirdo, not the only child, but I'm the weirdo. But honestly, it's like, hey, I don't want to go through what I did again. And this is something I believe that at least, or maybe just gives me the illusion that I have a little more control. But one of the ways I'm doing that is by having this surgery. So the surgery I'm having is a preventative one, and it's to remove my ovary. It's something that I knew that I'd always have to do. I'd have to have both my ovaries removed either by the time I'm done having kids or by 40. I just turned 35. So, like I said, I thought I had about 5 more years before I had to have this conversation. But all these
And
factors,
hopefully have another child, right?
right. And all these factors went into my doctor being like, no, like this is something that you should, I really am strongly encouraging you to do now. And so I had a conference with my breast cancer doctor and her team, and they were all like, yeah, we totally agree with this. And so, my little saving grace is to be able to do it in 2 steps. So I'll have one ovary removed this year and then the other ovary removed. I'm hoping I can maybe get like 2 more years with it because I've been in and out of menopause probably 4 different times now because of the different treatments I've been on. And my body really, really loves having estrogen in it. And menopause has been like really wicked for me. And so I'm hoping that doing this in stages allows me to have a bit more of a gradual experience into this kind of next phase I'm entering physically.
My brain is stuck on 4 times.
Yeah.
I've been through it.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's where I can identify, little piece I can
Yep.
identify here 4 times. That
Yeah.
makes wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, and then too, to do it at the age when your body is craving the hormones that you're being depleted of, I think it really, really cranks up the dial on everything you're going through. And then too, I can't do the hormone replacement therapies that are available to some individuals just because excess hormones for me is not a good idea. We're in the game of reduction. So
Mhm.
that's kind of why all this is happening and how it came to be.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so like I said, I called my coach like first thing, like I said, I like to be in the space that I'm in and I felt myself getting knocked out of it. So I gave my coach a call and I was like, I need at least 2 to 3 sessions with you prior and I need you to help me figure out how to go about doing this. And
Hmm.
so what was so cool,
Was that Kara?
Kara, yep. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, big shout out to Kara,
yeah. I was
not
on the phone with her earlier today about my son.
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. She's a wonderful coach, and
Yeah.
man, if you get to work with her, you certainly are lucky. She's really seasoned in the work that she does, and she's done a great job too of really allowing me to personalize all of this to me. And that's what, again, too, another beautiful, powerful thing about Pivot is that I don't have to stick to a cookie cutter format of one way to do things. It's like, how do you like to do things? What do your different parts need from this experience? And really, we started out by writing letters to each part, and that helped me identify one, like who was really like loud in this experience. My child was really scared. My
Explain the
teen
parts for our listeners. They might not follow you.
Sure, yeah. So it's like these essence of these, like imprints of these prior parts of ourselves. So like the childlike stage, what I picked up from this time in my life, and who I was in that stage, and what I've carried into this, who I am today. Same for the teen and adolescent years. What was I like then that is still alive and playing out today, and then the adult part too. And
Mhm.
so, we were able to identify my child is so scared. I watched my grandfather go through all of this and die from it. And just like in general, being in hospitals and the beeps and the sterileness, it's scary. Nothing's comforting and cozy about a hospital. Um, my teen is Stargirl, and she likes to. Some teens get rebellious. Mine, went complicit and wanted to please, and so she's feeling like a failure because she has to have attention focus on her and when she should be helping other people. She's going to have to ask for help, which feels terrible. She's not going to be able to have kids. Like, I should be able to have kids. I should be able to do all these things. I shoulds. And then my adult is just like angry and bitter. Like, I feel so robbed of so many things and dealing with experiences that, I shouldn't have to.
Here we
And
go again.
exactly, exactly.
Here
I
we
thought this was over. Like, really, is this going to be my life?
go.
And so I got to, identify that as well as,
So your healthy adult can go in and,
yes,
and help have that, self-talk to calm
yes,
down your child and to
yes,
let your teen off the hook and take the clipboard and to-do list away from her.
yes, yes, uh huh,
And your adult can reach out, and your healthy adult can help your adult express the
yes,
feelings and the anger, because it's okay to be angry.
yes, yes,
It's like what you do with it is what matters. Because if you get angry and then your daughter's around and she's picking up on all that, then it's just that's how those generational wounds get passed down. And something that's why I think this conversation is so important is that when we're not okay medically, like, it's a trauma in the family system.
mm-hmm, absolutely,
And it doesn't always look like, some of the trauma and drama that we get at Pivot.
mm-hmm,
Medical conditions are very, very problematic and traumatic
mm-hmm,
for a family unit
yes.
when someone is going through so much,
Yes.
so
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, um, taking care of like my child, I get to do that a lot with my daughter, and it shows her that I'm like still healthy and okay. Like before surgery now, instead of no food, no drinks, now they actually want you to drink, and you're supposed to drink Gatorade. So we got 3 Gatorade bottles, and we're like with puff paints and pom poms and feathers gluing them. So they look all crazy now, and I'm gonna be smiling when I drink them. And they were fun to create together, and she gets to feel like she's a part of this process. To help at the hospital, I had this custom blanket made with photos of my family and, friends and just people that I love. So I have that with me, and something soft and snuggly. Um, we've been swimming a lot. I'm not going to be allowed to swim for 6 weeks. And so that's why we're at my parents' lake house this week. So I can just, like, any free moment I have, be swimming and playing with her. And just, like, yeah, have a lot of play so that I can walk into this knowing that that part of self feels really cared for, really seen, and really at peace as much as possible going into this. Um, my teen, I've had to do a lot of self-talk there in my letter, and like reassurance, and well, also too, even something as, it might sound silly, but like my teen also was so boy crazy, and so having like my hunky husband at my side, my teen is like, yeah, like, look at this like hot man I have with me throughout this experience and taking care of me, and getting to lean into that, and kind of trying to let go of some of this perfection. And then, my adult, like, letting her be pissed, letting her be angry. Anytime someone tries to tell me like it's okay, I can say like, well, it's like, it's actually not okay, but it's okay that it's not okay, and I can be okay in that. And having this little gathering, this silly egg party, planning a trip for afterwards
So
when it's all done.
I don't perceive it as so
Yeah.
I think that is actually brilliant. And I'm really hoping that this trend picks up
Yeah.
and people really get the importance of what you've created here,
Yeah.
starting all the way back to your first prom.
Right, 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 right. Exactly.
It's that
Yeah.
is that's so incredible. It's just it really is. It really is. I'm curious, what's Charlie going to dress up like with
Yeah,
the
she's
egg?
gonna be a butterfly. She's gonna be a butterfly. My mom made her a dress. My mom really gifted in clothing design and actually making it. And so she made her a butterfly. My husband's gonna be a bee, and then I'm gonna be a jellyfish. Mhm. Yeah.
Oh,
We got a shark costume for one dog, and then a mermaid costume for the other dog. And my husband was confused about the mermaid, but I said, well, it's a fish on the bottom, so it probably lays eggs, right?
yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And so, like, again, like, if you don't think there are moments where I'm like laid out in bed in the fetal position, like really grieving this experience that I'm going into, like, you'd be a fool. But honestly, like, with all this intention that I put into it, and really like dissecting each part and all the steps leading up to it, it's like, it is very minimal. And it doesn't mean that the grief isn't real. And it doesn't mean that I'm being like avoidant to the experience. It's just that, like, I know it's like the both and, or it's like, yes, this is terrible. And like, I can still find something to celebrate. I can still find things to be thankful for. I can still be playful, and both that being able to hold and balance that duality, and shift towards this radical acceptance, of this is my reality. And so what am I going to do with it? Like, a message that's kind of been true for me all along is to really be your own advocate. And I
mhm.
think, while that's looked various different ways throughout my whole experience, from the very beginning of my doctors all telling me I was too young to have cancer, and they didn't even want to take me for an appointment. They wouldn't let me do imaging because, again, I was too young. But I got loud, and I was like, I think someone really needs, like, to take me seriously. And had that not, maybe I wouldn't be having this conversation with you today.
Yeah.
All the way to advocating for myself of, like, I am depressed and sad about this. And so I need all of you to dress up in silly costumes, or I don't know how to do this, any other way. And so
Mhm.
just learning how to have your voice. And that doesn't mean, being rude or overly assertive and demanding, but really, from your healthy adult, being able to have your voice and being able to be an advocate for yourself, and all those different parts of you, I just think is so important. And while that's a hard skill to learn sometimes, and it's definitely a muscle to build, I think we all have safe spaces in our life where we can practice that, whether it be the workplace, the classroom, on a sports team, in a relationship. But the more practice you get, it can really serve you well when you really need it, when it is life or death, or,
Right.
something major does happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's wow. What great. That's a great thing to leave people with.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's so important, that mindset. As I'm hearing you speak, I'm just thinking about the importance of protecting that mindset,
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
to stay ahead of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hey, well, like last thing I'll say is after 8.5 years, honestly, like 8.5 years, some people do it longer than me, some people shorter, but 8.5 years of doing things the traditional way, the clinical way of getting me the support that I needed. It was literally 5 days at the glass house and a couple months of coaching. And that is like, you can ask my very, very skeptical husband, what would you pinpoint the one thing in my life that changed my wife, changed our family? And it would be Pivot, the work that we did here.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's just an honest experience. And so it doesn't have to be so long, it doesn't have to be so painful. And just like there are different ways to do hard things, like going through surgery and prepping for it, there's also different ways to do hard things, like facing some of your own experiences or your patterns, and learning different ways to show up for yourself.
Mhm. Aw, well put. Well put. Yeah. Well, I know I'm not going to be there next Tuesday. I'm not going to be able to be back there. And I really would, because you know me, I love a good theme
Yep.
party.
Yep.
We've, you've come to some of the coaches' retreats. We've had disco night,
Yep.
we've had Oscar night.
Yep.
Like, I love a good theme party. So I'm thinking, gosh, how do I want to end with you today? And I thought, I just want you to know, from LJ to you, that I will your egg
Oh my God.
any day. And I am with you in spirit, celebrating the eggs. So you can know that I'm there with you.
That was excellent, LJ. Totally unexpected.
There you go.
Thank you so much
So
for that.
with that note,
Talk about love. That was genuine. Thank you
yeah,
so much.
yes. I'm going to be encouraging all of us to send you some cute videos and be there with you in spirit.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Hmm.
And thank you for your time today, and thank you for your valuable message to teach others about we can't. You can't look at me with a straight face. I know I'm sitting there going, well, what do we think? There's got to be I know some hairdressers thinking, oh, that's good for your hair,
Yeah, I
LJ.
know. Yeah, it is. I mean, people do egg hair washes and egg face masks. So there you go.
Oh, good. I'll just start putting it on my face. Anyway, seriously though, I think it's important. There are different ways to do hard things.
Yes.
And you have done such an excellent job today, just describing what you've done to approach something very difficult and very hard. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud to be your friend.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
so proud to be your friend. So, with that, I think we can sign off and wish you well, much love and light and success.
Thank you. Thanks for that.